Howdy, howdy, everyone. Welcome to the Monday stream. I hope everyone's having an awesome Monday morning. It is, yet again, Monday. Alright, folks, we do have quite the amount of headlines to go through and a new Beckosphere video. Just gotta make sure we have everything set up here. Morning. I've got my coffee. I've got my coffee ready, so I think that we are good to go. All right. Thanks for helping with the fundraiser. They raised $21,000. Poggers. Unbelievable. That was, massive. I think they may have, hit their goal there. They might have hit their goal there. Just about. First story of the day. Known economist, armchair economist, Jack Dorsey, is estimating, I guess, predicting that hyperinflation will be a thing. However, despite there being some type of possibility of that, it seems like more or less the issue here is not so much hyperinflation, but more or less like supply chain issues. Supply chain issues is what's really causing the problems here. Twitter founder Jack Dorsey has issued a cryptic warning about hyperinflation will change everything. In a typical Dorsey style, the social media CEO tweeted out this comment saying that it will happen in the US soon, and so the world. Hyperinflation is typically very high in accelerated inflation. Researchers have documented 57 cases of hyperinflation in 2018, with the first recorded episode occurring between 1795 and 1796 in post-revolutionary France, according to The Economist. Some economists and writers have looked at the possibility of hyperinflation in the US as early as March 2021, when the economy started getting back on track after an artificially depressed year due to lockdowns and immense restrictions during the coronavirus pandemic. policies that officials started reversing as vaccines became more available. I think that the reality is here, I'm not sure just how immense the restrictions were. We're gonna have to take a look at that one. Even during the pandemic, I'm not sure we're sold about the. I'm not sold on the idea that there was like an immense restriction, despite even at the height of the pandemic. I don't know. Then again, the term raises some grim images, with Venezuela the most recent example, and Zimbabwe perhaps one of the most famous examples of hyperinflation. Yeah, but these are two different things. This is meme economics. Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, a Twitter billionaire is trying to throw his ideas out there. I don't know, his opinions out there. Fear of inflation, if not outright hyperinflation, helps explain the meteoric rise of Bitcoin. It's behind the distrust of the Fed, and it feeds congressional opposition to President's $1.9 trillion pandemic relief plan. Indeed, Republicans have warned of inflation since the start of the summer, when gas prices first started to tick upward and prices followed shortly after. Consumer prices rose over 5% in the 12 months between June of 2020 and 2021, the AP reported. This marked the largest one-year increase since 2008 and possibly the biggest since 1992, excluding more volatile items such as food and energy. Representative Jim Banks and his constituents have seen higher prices in gas in particular, but also groceries and the cost to keep their business running. Yeah, well, like a lot of this is not due to the spending plans, okay? Just to be clear. Such voters, he said, know intuitively that this is due to Democrats' economic agenda and big spending plans. That's not how that works. Prices have continued to trend upwards as historical, and here's the actual explanation to these things. As historical global shipping backlog delays the transports of goods and services across the board, slowly driving up prices from toilet paper to toys. Yeah, so like, it's not because the Democratic Party is trying to do economic packages. Okay, the Democratic Party's spending packages aren't the ones who are to blame here. Officials are working to ease the backlog and therefore fight the onset of general inflation, let alone hyperinflation, but the results of those efforts may not be apparent for some time. Oof. I don't think that we're going to see like hyperinflation. I think that this inflation will be just kind of steady, will just kind of be a thing probably for the next year or so, depending on how fast things get back to quote normal in terms of our supply chains, because we have such a great system. We have such a amazing, very efficient just-in-time supply lines. It will take quite some time before any of that gets to more or less normal levels. There have been some areas here where there's shortages in certain items. There's been shortages where my parents live when it comes to toilet paper and paper towels. Yes, that's still a thing. And up to and including stores such as Costco rationing paper towels and toilet paper. So yeah, it's not the Democrats. It's the supply chain, and it will take quite a while for it to get back to normal, especially with all the things that have been happening. I mean, there's a container ship right now that was on fire and lost 40 containers worth of stuff. So not too keen on accepting a armchair economist opinion. in a shocking article, lift the minimum wage and employment still rises, how to anger establishments and win a Nobel Prize. What do you think happens to unemployment when the minimum wage increases? Does unemployment go up or down? The question has plagued economists for generations. On one hand, you might think that the minimum wage should be lower so businesses have more money to hire more workers. No. On the other hand, you might wonder what it would actually be. Would it actually be better to increase minimum wage so workers have more money to spend because it would boost consumption and growth and see business hiring more staff to meet the extra demand, which would feed a virtuous cycle? Well, the winners of the Nobel Memorial Prize in Economic Sciences this year showed how to answer the question, and they did it by looking at the real world. One of the biggest problems in social science is how to study cause and effect. For example, what does immigration have on employment and wages? Wait, hold on. That's kind of a weird framing, isn't it? One of the big problems in social sciences is how to study cause and effect, but they do this all the time. Okay. For example, isn't that the whole idea of studying social sciences? It is to make links to make links between cause and effect and make sure that it's not just like a coincidence. We try to root out different factors. Like, I don't know. It seems kind of weird. It can be difficult to answer questions like that because even though you know immigration is occurring, you can't say what would happen to the economy if there had been less immigration, so you can't compare the situation to anything. But David Card, professor of economics at University of California, Berkeley, helped solve the problem using a novel approach. He demonstrated how you can answer questions about cause and effect using natural experiments. Take the question of what happens to unemployment when minimum wage is increased. In the United States in the 1990s, the conventional wisdom was that any increase in the minimum wage would push unemployment higher because it would increase wage costs for business. However, Card shows that that's not necessarily the case. Yeah, cool, wow, amazing. However, Card showed that that's not necessarily the case. With a friend economist, Alan Kruger, who died in 2019 at 58, he found a way to test the idea. In 1992, the minimum wage in New Jersey was scheduled to increase from $4.25 to $5.05. It was going to give New Jersey the highest state minimum wage rate in the United States, and it was strongly opposed by business leaders. How could you record its impact? Well, it wouldn't be good enough to study the New Jersey labor market alone, because too many variables can influence a single labor market over time. But Card and Kruger found a way. They knew that just across the border in neighboring Pennsylvania, the minimum wage wasn't going to increase. They reasoned that since eastern Pennsylvania had a similar labor market to New Jersey, they could run a natural experiment. And this is how they did it. They knew they had two very similar labor markets, but they also realized that they had a control group, Pennsylvania, where nothing was going to change, and a treatment group, New Jersey, where nothing was going to change except one variable, the increase in minimum wage. So they studied 410 fast food restaurants in New Jersey and Pennsylvania before and after the rise of minimum wage, and what they found challenged the economic orthodoxy. How do employers in a low-wage labor market respond to an increase in minimum wage? They asked in their 1993 paper. The prediction from conventional economic theory is unambiguous. A rise in the minimum wage leads profit-maximizing employers to cut employment. They pointed to this 1946 paper by George Stigler as an example of the reigning economic orthodoxy. Our empirical findings challenge the prediction that a rise in minimum wage reduces employment. Relative to stores in Pennsylvania and fast food restaurants in New Jersey increased employment by 13%. Another interesting element of the research, the rise in minimum wage occurred during a recession. Nice. The research didn't conclude that that an increase in minimum wage would boost employment in every circumstance, far from it, but it challenged the view that an increase in minimum wage would always lead to unemployment. However, their findings weren't welcomed by the establishment. In fact, they sparked an emotional debate in the economics profession. American economist James Buchanan, a Nobel laureate himself, was scathing of the suggestion that a core law of economics might not be universal after all. Wait, what? The inverse relationship between quantity demanded and prices core proposition in economic science, which embodies the presupposition. Oh, Jesus Christ. Like, should I just read this in a Jordan Peterson voice? The inverse relationship between the quantity demanded and price is a core proposition in economic science, which embodies the presupposition that human choice and behavior is sufficiently rational to allow predictions to be made. Just as no physicist would claim that water runs uphill, no self-respecting economist would claim that increases in minimum wage would increase employment. Except that's not how any social science works, first of all. Like, economics, that's not how that works. Economics isn't like a hard science, right? Economics isn't like physics, where you know that if you do the math correctly and you know you input whatever formula or whatever, that you're going to get the result that you're asking for, right? Economics doesn't work that way. How could you be so, like, naive? This guy's a Nobel laureate in economics. Yikes. Such a claim, if seriously advanced, becomes equivalent to a denial that there is even minimal scientific context in economics, and that, in consequence, economists can do nothing but write as advocates for ideological interests. Isn't that what economists are anyways? Kind of? I mean, kind of? Like, so just to be clear, there's no, like... the science of economics is all based on data, is all based on models. And those models are made by humans with the variables that they input, right? You can't just, like, account for everything all the time. Unless you study it. Fortunately, only a handful of economics are willing to throw over the teaching of 2 centuries. We have not yet become a bevy of camp following. Okay. In Australia, the debate was also fiery, with opponents lining up to discredit Card and Kruger's findings. Over the next few years, old economic orthodoxy was simply reasserted while the new heresy was dismissed. Yeah, but tell me how scientific that is. As a conservative economist, Judith Sloan claimed in 1995, the bottom line is that we need not to discard our traditional thinking on the effects of the minimum wage. 1996, Australian Council of Trade Union economists Grant Belchamber and Tim Harcourt summarized the intellectual fallout this way. In the natural sciences, when there's a mounting experimental evidence fails to accord with theoretical prediction, the theory is questioned and ultimately discarded. In economics and theology, where orthodox theory is widely taken to be self-evident truth, it tends to be the contrary evidence. It tends to be the contrary evidence which is discarded. However, the evidence and argument assembled by Card and Kruger is so meticulous, exhaustive, and well documented that it cannot be ignored by a discipline that proudly claims to be committed to rational thought. Yikes. In 2006, Card reflected back on the debate in the 90s, and he said it was a difficult time for him. I've subsequently stayed away from the minimum wage literature for a number of reasons. First, it cost me a lot of friends, people that I had known for many years. For instance, some of the ones that I met at my job in the University of Chicago became very angry and disappointed. They thought that I was publishing work or being traitors to the cause of economics as a whole. Wait, what? What? That's so bizarre. Okay. Pioneering research led to a large number of follow-up studies. At any rate, Card and Kruger's research showed that how problems in social science could be tackled using natural experiments, and their compelling methodology helped to revolutionize empirical research in economics, leading to a large number of similar studies in areas such as labor markets, immigration, and education. And 2 other economists, Professor Joshua Angrist of Massachusetts of MIT, Cambridge, and Professor Guido Imbens of Stanford University, have shared the 2021 Nobel with Card for similar reasons. In their work in the 1990s helped to buttress Card and Kruger's work by showing how precise conclusions about cause and effect can be drawn from natural experiments. Card's studies of core questions for society and Angrist and Imbens' methodological contributions have shown that natural experiments are a rich source of knowledge. Yeah, no kidding. Their research has substantially improved our ability to answer key causal questions, which have been a great benefit to society. Together, their work showed how labor markets can behave differently from the orthodox model. And that's because humans are a factor. As Nobel laureate Robert Solow said once, the labor market is social as well as an economic institution, and the interaction between human beings cannot be interpreted the same way as a supply and demand for dead fish. True. True. So the TLDR of this experiment and what got them the actual... and it's amazing that in 2021, they finally reached this conclusion that it turns out raising the minimum wage doesn't affect unemployment. I know, it's a shocker. And hey, Astro B London, how's it going? It turns out that minimum wage doesn't affect the labor market, or doesn't affect the unemployment. And the second follow-up to that was immigration actually doesn't depress wages like everybody originally thought. I know, amazing. Even though there had been previous studies alluding to this fact, and like it's been kind of known in the down low, it's kind of been known that like immigration, generally speaking, doesn't really depress wages, and if it does, it's like by like 1% or something like that. I forget what the study was. It escapes my memory, but there have been numerous indications that immigration doesn't actually depress wages in any way, shape, or form. Like, it's 2021, and the Nobel Prize for Economics was given because they discovered a truth that I could have probably told you in my chair here. It's kind of a funny meme to me, but hey, I guess it's written in stone now. I guess it's written in stone. I just watched Engineering with Rosie on YouTube. She has demonstrated flame off in oil and gas drilling is by far the largest emitter of atmospheric carbon pollution. Yeah, I could probably, well, in terms of oil and gas, I think that that could probably be true, especially since they don't really take care of their infrastructure. There's a lot of escaped greenhouse gases, more or less, or worse off, I should say, methane. Most Americans want major overhauls to the U.S. economy, political system, and healthcare. No way. No way. Breaking news, guys. People want things better. I know. Shocker. It's 70% of all emissions. Yep. So sounds to me like we need to not be tied to oil and gas. Sounds like that to me. So yeah, breaking news. Americans want a better system. As the post-pandemic economy starts to take shape, most Americans appear to be hopeful it'll look quite different from its current state. A majority of Americans surveyed in February indicated they want major changes or complete reforms to much of the way the U.S. operates, according to a new Pew Research Center report, which includes a survey of people in more than a dozen of the world's advanced economies. 85% of surveyed American adults say they want an overhaul of the country's political system, while 66% they said want major changes to the U.S. economy. Just over 3/4 of respondents said there need to be major reform to the country's healthcare systems. Yeah, no kidding. The Americans surveyed were generally more dissatisfied with the government than residents of other advanced economies who were surveyed. Yeah, I wonder I wonder what could possibly be the source of that. That doesn't sound right. Desire to change political systems were only higher in Spain and Italy, with 86% and 89% of respective residents wanting major overhauls. Yeah, I could see an argument for Italy. Only the residents of South Korea, Greece, Spain, Italy were more dissatisfied with their national economies than the Americans. The US had the second largest share of people calling for healthcare reform, surpassed only by Greece. The findings also reveal a bleak outlook among Americans as the country pushes towards economic recovery from the coronavirus pandemic. The US is outpacing many other countries' recoveries at a rising rate of vaccinations have fueled reopening of stronger consumer spending. Well, I don't know about this. The US economic output has already fully recovered its pandemic-era slump, and officials say the country is expected to return to full employment next year. Despite these improvements, survey found that widespread discontent with the state of the nation. The survey period covers the time that the virus cases remained elevated, the labor shortage curbed hiring, and inflation soared to decade highs. While recovery was underway, new obstacles were slowing it down. While most Americans said they want major changes throughout the country, few seemed optimistic those overhauls could happen. 85% of respondents said they want major political reform in the US, but only 28% expressed confidence that the system could change. So people want change. People want massive change, but don't feel very confident that it will actually happen within the system. Well, I would wager that the reason for that is because of the way people feel apathetic. The people feel like their voice is not being heard, and that is a failure that stems back to decades, I would say. That is a failure that stems back to decades. Parts of the pessimism comes from partisan conflict and a fraught political climate. Yeah, but I mean, sure, this kind of like pushed everything off the cliff, but this was already a long time coming, considering that our representatives, presidents, administrations have been letting a lot of very severe problems kind of just continue to be kicked down the road time and time again, and now is when all the chickens are coming home to roost, basically. Yeah, fertilizer is a chemical. Desires to overhaul some systems are starkly different between Democrats and Republicans. While 80% of Democrats said the economic system needs a complete overhaul, just half of Republicans said the same. And where 39% of Democrats want major change to healthcare, roughly half as many Republicans agreed. The partisan divide is no clearer than a 50-50 split Senate. Okay, Democrats have struggled to pass much of President Biden's legislative agenda as Republicans block efforts with filibusters. Some of Biden's social spending plans have been approved through lengthy reconciliation process, which requires a 50-vote majority, yet the complicated process can be only used so many times, and infighting between conservative and progressive Democrats also pose a challenge to Biden's spending ambitions. Spending ambitions. Like, the framing of this is as if there's like as if it's like some kind of willy-nilly decision. As if it's like a pet project. Like, no, this is kind of necessary. All of this is necessary. Partisan divisions are partially why so many Americans are hungry for overhaul. Pew said 9 in 10 Americans see the conflict between people of different political parties intensifying unhappiness with the state of democracy and a strong desire for political reform. Yikes. Yikes. According to Pew, only 41% of US respondents say they were satisfied with how democracy was working. Holy yikes. So that's kind of concerning. That's kind of concerning, considering the fact that, like, when people have such a shaky opinion about democracy, usually that kind of gets co-opted, and usually the response is a strongman comes along and says, you know what? Maybe this democracy thing ain't so hot. Listen to me. I will solve your problems. Altogether, the survey paints a picture of a country experiencing mass discontent. True. Few Americans reported feeling happy with the country's political, economic, or healthcare system. Most of those wanting major change aren't optimistic that it can happen and show little faith in the country's democratic processes. Yikes. That's kind of concerning. That is concerning. So this tells me that people do want change, and people are looking for change to happen. People want reforms. People want a better system. But they're not confident that it's going to happen like this, which is deeply concerning, because this is right for some type of strongman to come along and say, you know what? I listen to you. I understand. I understand what you guys want. Here, trust me. I will fix your problems. And that gets very, very scary. No. Master London. He got close. But a more confident, a more capable version of Trump is the problem, right? Trump, thank goodness, was too inept, too incapable, and some, safety, some guardrails that our systems had were just enough to kind of like keep it together. But the fact that more and more people are showing little faith in democratic processes, the fact that 9 in 10 Americans see conflict between people of different political parties, intensifying unhappiness with the state of democracy and a strong desire for political reform. That's the problem. Only 41% of respondents say they were satisfied with how democracy was working. That's the problem. I don't know if it was this high, but yeah, surely Trump was kind of like an early warning system of how this could manifest itself. And we're just basically lucky that he's like just really, really incompetent, and that the guardrails in place kind of worked. What little institutions, what little strength and what little strength the institutions had kind of coalesced together and made it. It's fine. But the fact that more and more people are becoming this dissatisfied with democracy working is going to or potentially lead to somebody who is way more competent, way more adept, way more knowledgeable about how the system works to get there, right? MTG? Oh no. I don't know. I don't think she's gonna get even 5 foot. I don't think she's even gonna get within 5 feet of running. I don't think so. But someone who's like way more competent and way more able to navigate the system is more dangerous, I think. I think the TLDR of this story is that people are unsatisfied. People are unsatisfied with the way things are going, and they are starting to realize that change is necessary. It's not an option. We have to change, and we have to basically reorganize our priorities, because this isn't working, right? All of these problems that have been pushed down the road for decades at a time. I mean, things that have been occurring even beforehand, even starting from the 80s and up, right? Things like what has led to just this gross level of income inequality that is manifesting itself here. I mean, this is decades in the work. This didn't just happen. This didn't just happen. This was a lot of repeated policy failures, repeated unwillingness to address the real problems, and all this is the last. All this is the chickens coming home to roost. That's all it is. And people know, people understand, people want change. People want change, and we have to correct this before. We're in late-stage capitalism, and it can either lead to socialism or feudalism. Well, I'm worried that the conditions will lead to the latter. I think the conditions will lead to, especially, the manifestation of the strength, I think, of the the strength of the far right is way much. So I'm worried about that. History shows many cases of extreme leaders getting to the top since Egyptians. True. Especially in times of crises, usually strong men get to the top because they take advantage of the crises. Are these questions, issues, and practices because the system is corrupt and incompetent, or we can't change it? Well, most people think that apparently, most Americans think that it can't actually be changed, and most people think that our confidence in democracy is slipping. Our confidence in democracy is slipping. Whatever semblance of the democratic system that we have, whatever thinly veiled democratic system that we have is failing, and people are searching for answers. People are searching for answers. No system is perfect. That is true. That is true. The problem here is that when you have a country like this in crisis, and you have a country like this suffering, or at least the working classes like suffering enough for them to be able to want this kind of change, and then on top of that feel like they're not being heard, and feel like the democratic apparatuses in place aren't working, what semblance of them aren't working, that's when things start getting a little cringe, my friends. That's when things start getting a little cringe. When people repeatedly are looking for answers and repeatedly do not find those answers for decades at a time, and they want change. and they feel like they're not being heard, and the faith of the democratic system, or what semblance of it, starts to slip, that's when things get a little worrisome. Pretty much every system since the Egyptians has shown corruption and destructive tendencies. Romans lived on bread and gladiator games. Yeah, sure, but there's always going to be some type of level of corruption. Sure, but you can always make sure that those things are kept in check. You can always make sure that there's as many guardrails as possible to avoid corruption or to disincentivize corruption and all this other stuff, and to be very adamant about making sure that it is not okay. But, you know, you'll never get corruption out 100%, but you can add guardrails in place to make sure that it is less likely. And, yeah, the only reason Romans, resorted to bread and gladiator games is because I was already in decline, right? There's a lot of, there was like a plague, there was a lot of political, the political landscape was pretty fraught. People were tired, hungry. Oh, wait a minute. Huh. Just a thought. We live on gladiator games. Do we not have, like, events 24/7? Every weekend there's an event. Every weekend there's something going on. Combat sports are huge. The UFC is huge. It's billions and billions and billions and billions of dollar industry. Last time I checked, we do have gladiator games. We have the World Cup is coming, and after that there's going to be the Super Bowl, and after that there's going to be the NBA season, and after that it's constant, right? But will the professional class and or executives tolerate actual change? Probably not. Probably not. If it touches any penny in their pocket, they won't. I mean, don't we see the oil and gas industry fight tooth and nail for the most modicum of changes? Something that won't even take them out of business necessarily. And they're fighting it super hard. They don't want anything to be even remotely looking in the direction of taking out their profits. That's the problem. Which leads to more and more people being angry. The result of profit is presumably come near as religion. Yeah, well, we have our own evangelical Talibangelicals. We've got it all. That is a religion. TLDR, people are discontent. People want change. And it seems like the politicians are reacting appropriately. They're not representing the people, which is leading to a decline in the trust of our institutions, a decline in the trust of whatever semblance, even remote appearance of democracy that there is. It's all slipping away, and basically that's very scary. That should worry people, and it should urge us to mobilize and do what we can. The Facebook Papers, apparently, a series of articles published by a consortium of 17 U.S. news outlets beginning on Friday, shed new light on the company's thinking behind its actions leading up to the Capitol insurrection on January 6 and its ability to fend off hate speech in languages outside of English. Facebook shares were slightly higher in trading on Monday after the news outlet published their stories based on leaked documents. The company is also scheduled to report quarterly earnings. I don't care. The documents were provided to news outlets by Frances Haugen, a former Facebook employee who took tens of thousands of pages of internal research with her before she left. She's since provided those documents to Congress and has Security Exchange Commission seeking whistleblower status. At the heart of these stories is a premise which is false. A Facebook spokesperson in a statement in response to the flood of reporting, "Yes, we're a business, yeah, and we make profit, but the idea that we do so at the expense of people's safety or well-being misunderstands where our commercial interests lie. The truth is, we've invested $13 billion and have over 40,000 people to do one job: keep people safe on Facebook." Well, here's the problem. There's a lot of papers to indicate the exact opposite. As their platform, and they knew about this, their platform was used to facilitate or coordinate, or coordinate, if you want to use those words, genocide in Myanmar. That's something that's documented, okay? And the reality is that they do at the expense of people's safety. They do make profit at the expense of people's safety. That's exactly what they do. You are the product. Your data is the currency, the price. Wow, I did not know that, Material Squirrel. Roman gladiators had about the same life expectancy as the average trans woman living in the Americas. Wow. Have you been following the political backtracking on climate change targets by all leaders going to COP26? We're going to watch a video about that in a second. I'm not too confident. I wouldn't say confident. I'm not too expecting. Seeing as the actions behind the Biden administration has been underwhelming, not really there, sometimes even going in the reverse direction. I don't expect much in COP26 from the United States. Facebook aggravated Myanmar. I don't know about aggravated. They facilitated, and they knew what was going on in their platform, and were either incapable or ignored, or just kind of let it happen. The documents reveal frustration among Facebook ranks about the company's ability to get the spread of content that has potentially incite violence under control. "We haven't had enough time to figure out how to manage discourse without enabling violence," an employee wrote on an internal messaging board during the riot outside the Capitol on January 6th. "We've been fueling this fire for a long time, and we shouldn't be surprised it's now out of control." Facebook had put additional emergency measures in place ahead of the 2020 election to stem the spread of violent or dangerous content if needed, but as many as 22 of those measures were set aside after the election and before January 6th. Yikes. Facebook spokesperson told the outlet its use of those measures followed signals from its own platform law enforcement. Some of those reports showed that Facebook's content moderation systems can fall flat when faced with languages besides English. AP reported that Arabic poses a particularly difficult challenge for content moderators. Arabic-speaking users have learned to use symbols or extra spaces in words thought of to set off flags in Facebook systems like names of militant groups. While the methods are meant by some to avoid an overzealous content moderation system, AP reported that certain measures have managed to avoid Facebook's hate speech censors. We're currently enforcing counterterrorism content. We're incorrectly enforcing counterterrorism content in Arabic. An internal Facebook document said, according to AP. Meanwhile, it said the system can limit users from participating in political speech, impeding the right to freedom of expression. Facebook's AP told AP it's putting more resources into recruiting local dialect and topic experts and has researched ways to improve its systems. Other reports show that some Facebook employees were dismayed at the company's handling of misinformation in India, believing leadership made decisions to avoid angering the Indian government. Hate speech concerns in the region were amplified by similar language barriers as in the Middle East. According to the AP, Facebook has added hate speech classifiers in Hindi and Bengali in 2018 and 2020 respectively. One researcher who set up an account as a user in India in 2019 found that by Facebook's algorithm recommendations, they saw more images of dead people in the past 3 weeks than I've seen in my entire life total. Jesus Christ. Facebook spokesperson told The Times that hate speech against marginalized groups in India and elsewhere have been growing, and it's committed to updating our policies as hate speech evolves online. Other reports show the existential issue facing the company if it failed to hold on to enough... Oh, this is cringe. If it failed to hold on to enough young users, the platform is already experiencing a dip in engagement among teens. Most adults perceive Facebook as a place for people in their 40s and 50s. True. A March presentation from a team of data scientists, according to The Verge, young adults perceive content as boring, misleading, and negative. True. That's all I see on Facebook. They often get past irrelevant content to get what matters. The documents showed that Facebook plans to test several ideas to increase teen engagement, like asking young users to update their connections and tweaking the news algorithm to show users posts from outside their own network. A Facebook spokesperson told The Verge that the platform is no different from any social media site and wants teens to use its services. Yeah, okie dokie. Sure. UK leaders are watering down all its climate goals, not surprised. Yeah, so company doing what company does is basically the TLDR of this story. We take a trip back to a couple of years ago, 2017, I believe. Trial of Charlottesville's Unite the Right rally organizers are set to start. A civil trial will begin on Monday, today, to determine whether the 2017 Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, Virginia was part of a conspiracy to engage racially motivated violence, according to the Washington Post. 9 people filed a lawsuit alleging physical harm or emotional distress during the rally, which a counter-protester was killed and dozens more were injured when a man intentionally drove his car into the... It wasn't a man, it was a white supremacist who intentionally drove his car into a crowd. Defendants brought with them to Charlottesville the imagery of the Holocaust of slavery, Jim Crow, and fascism. True. They also brought with them They also brought with them semi-automatic weapons, pistols, mace, rods, armor, shields, and torches. Yikes. Leaked messages from the rally's planners contained slurs regarding black and Jewish people, as well as talk of cracking skulls and driving into crowds, which manifested itself. That actually manifested itself. Here's the thing. I reported on the FBI investigations of I forgot the guy's name. I want to say, Jason Klepper? I want to say Jason Klepper, but for some reason that's the name that's sticking out of my head. Let's see if we can find it. Oh, you know what? It's on my YouTube channel. I could find it. My channel. No, not my channel. My YouTube studio. Which, by the way, you should all subscribe to the YouTubes. All right, help us spread the word. Content. Let's see if we can find it. It's a bit old. It's a bit of an old video. Sorry, Jason Kessler. Jason Kessler is the guy's name. During an FBI investigation, which I did, let's see here. January of 2020. January of 2020, where there were leaked messages between, I think it was the Proud Boys, or whoever was organizing the Unite the Right rally. And they wanted to make sure that they instigated the counter-protesters. They wanted the counter-protesters to attack them, so that then they could claim self-defense and have a chance at assaulting the counter-protesters without them being the aggressors, right? It's only about 5 minutes, I think. But I think this is pretty much what I'm getting at. Old ADT. Come on. Along with a few Antifa members, are more as an effect. This is who they really are.
We're coming back here like 100 times. I am so mad. I am so mad.
Oh yeah, this guy. Come on. Bring firearms as it might deter counter-protesters. Oh yes, here it is. It was encouraging. Come on. The Daily Beast, there was a document dumped by Unicorn Riot in which logs of private conversations from Kessler were leaked, showing that Kessler encouraged violence and was in fact anticipating it. He was encouraging the neo-Nazis not to bring firearms as it might deter counter-protesters from engaging them. He wanted Antifa, or the counter-protesters, to come after them so that they would be able to beat them up in self-defense. Yeah, there we go. That's what it is. It was an FBI investigation that found that Jason Kessler and all of these other folks who were... Hey, Kal-El, yes, hair was down back then. I remember those one viewer Andy days. I appreciate you sticking by this entire time. Thank you. Thank you. That really does put a smile on my face. The one viewer Andy days. So my point is that back then, January 20th, a year ago, there was already indications that they knew and in fact wanted counter-protesters to attack them. They wanted counter-protesters to assault them so that they can claim self-defense and then retaliate, right? One message, leaked messages from rallies planners contain slurs regarding black and Jewish people, as well as other talks about cracking skulls and driving into crowds, which sadly manifested itself. The messages that the court will consider a part of the over 5 terabytes of evidence, the Post reported. One message of this is that these events, like Charlottesville, January 6th, are not spontaneous or flukish events that just happen. Yeah, like the idea that this just like magically happened, or this was just a oh yeah, it just had to spur of the moment. Nah. There's an enormous undercurrent of planning, intent, and purposefulness that we all need to wake up to. I agree. Especially like the especially when we have logs. There were leaked logs from these people. It's not like this was a thing that we made up. It's not like this was a fabrication of reality. There were literal logs from these people communicating with each other. and anticipating this. In fact, even though this report says that they actually did bring firearms, the actual planners themselves actively told them not to bring any type of weapons, not to bring anything that would deter the counter-protesters from attacking them. Oak Pine, what kind of logs? I believe the logs were from WhatsApp, I think. I forget. Either WhatsApp or Discord, however they were communicating back then. However they were communicating. I'm gonna say WhatsApp, I think. Yeah, sure, Gloria Miller. I don't know if that's how, like, it actually works. How many gigabytes of data can one tree ring hold? Unlimited amounts. Yeah, like a quantum log, exactly. Weird posting in YouTube chat. Weird posting in YouTube chat. Yeah, so they're not spontaneous. None of this. There's a lot of, especially with the more aggressive, with the more far-right extreme groups, there's nothing spontaneous about this. Unicorn Glitty, how's it going? I'm here but not awake. Grab your coffee. The attorney for the plaintiffs reportedly intend to use a law from the Reconstruction era that was intended to protect emancipated black people from the KKK. The defendants are some of the most notorious white supremacists and neo-Nazis in the country, and the figures in the country. The Post said that some of them are expected to testify during the trial, but documents indicate that others have not complied with court orders. Well, there's consequences for that. The defendants intend to blame the violence on counter-protesters and lack of police preparedness. There was a definite lack of police preparedness, but I would say that the violence didn't just happen, okay? They will argue that their violent messages were protected speech regarding a permitted rally to protest Charlottesville plans to remove the statue of Confederate Robert E. Lee. The Hill has reached out for attorneys for the defendants and plaintiffs for more information. Yeah, so, I'm sorry. But the violence didn't happen spontaneously, okay? Violence was anticipated, expected, and looked forward to by these people. They wanted it. They wanted it. As my video states, they wanted these folks to be attacked, claim self-defense, and then say, and I am quoting Jason Kessler here, to quote, kick commie ass all over God's green earth. That is the exact quote that he said in the leaked messages. So they wanted it. And it happened. Right. That is correct. I heard an extreme right person claim that January 6th happened because law enforcement were deliberately under strength and wanted the riot. I don't know if, like, law enforcement wanted the riot. I don't think so. According to a lot of like the research behind what's been going on, it was a gross incompetence where the ball was dropped on all levels. The ball was dropped on all levels. The ball was dropped on all levels in that case. Yeah, good question, Memo. That is a very good question. Yeah. These are valid questions. That's kind of weird. You're right. Because it wasn't like they didn't know, that's for sure. The FBI admitted that they knew. I mean, it was all over social media, whether you're talking about Parler, whether you're talking about Gab, or whether you're talking about Facebook groups. They knew. They knew, and they knew, and the intelligence was there. It was just not. It was just so grossly mishandled that this happened. They let it happen because they're Confederates. They just let other Confederates do it to just how many in the armed forces? Well, I don't know if like you could call them Confederates. If you mean like sympathetic to the people from January 6th, I'm sure. And there was even cops within the crowd. Not Capitol Police. I mean other other cops from other places. And including members of the armed forces, some veterans, some active duty. Yeah, Spoder, exactly, the Spoder meme. There's a cop, there's a photo of the cop fist bumping a Nazi in Texas the other day. Holy yikes, Batman. Jesus. I'm in the South? Oh, okay. Okay, I see. It's the same thing. Gotcha. Derek Metcalf, thank you for the follow. Appreciate that. And the South are specifically taught that the South will rise again. Yeah, wasn't that the guy... Wait. Wasn't that the guy who took a pickup truck, drove all the way to DC, and had like a standoff with Capitol Police for like 5 hours, claiming that he had a bomb. That was never confirmed. I don't think he actually had a bomb, but he was saying that he did. And that he was parked outside the Library of Congress, I think, and he said something to that effect. He was from Georgia. Was he? I think he was from Georgia, and he said something to that effect, like the South will rise again, or the South is here, or something like that. The South was here. I forget what it was his words in that weird live stream that he was doing on Facebook, I think. Yes, he did have a propane tank. The cops did find a propane tank, but I'm not sure if that was like set to blow. Nonetheless, it doesn't matter. He was threatening a explosion. All of that is irrelevant. He was threatening to blow up the Library of Congress, or he was parked at the Library of Congress. Oh, he had a truck full of ammonium nitrate. Now that I didn't know. I know they found the propane tank. Yikes. American states are looking to secede now from the Union. Yeah, I don't know. Every time I see this kind of talk, Derek Metcalf, I get like insta-triggered. They're just gonna let these movements marinate and grow, and another domestic attack will happen. I mean, we had the guy just not that long ago, that same guy that I'm talking about. The guy that drove in that pickup truck was not that long ago. Regardless, I think that regardless, the point is the guy was threatening a bomb, okay? And That was the point. And he did say something to the effect of, well, the South is here, or the South rising, or something about that. I can't remember his exact quotes, but he was live streaming it on Facebook, no less. Facebook, no less. Can I trust our representatives again? Well, the thing is, they're not really representing, are they? That's the major problem we're having, the major disconnect. The major disconnect we're having here is, like, the representatives that are supposed to be there, that are supposed to be there to represent us aren't doing so. And we went over this earlier, Derek Metcalf, about how all of this decades of kicking cans down the road, of not addressing problems, of just continuing to kind of really just let things kind of bubble for decades. Now all the chickens are coming home to roost. Nobody has a trust in our systems. Nobody, the trust in democracy is slipping in this country. And yeah, you're gonna keep doing that and worse until we make hard decisions regarding armed insurrectionists, extremists, traitors, or rebels. Well, I mean, there's like 500 people that are gonna face consequences to some degree, I think, based on the January 6th thing. Democracy is not all that holds our union together. True, but our systems and institutions in place do have a role to play. Unfortunately, they're being tested to the limit, and I don't know. I don't know if how much of that will hold, especially if only like 41% of people have a slipping trust of democracy. There's also a mutual hatred of monarchs that we all should share. Like, are you talking about like authoritarianism? Well, the thing is, if the slip in trust of democracy continues to slip this way, then it kind of opens the door for a strong man to come in and say, hey, you know what? Maybe this democracy thing ain't working. I got it. Listen to me. I will tell you. I will solve this problem. Me alone. That's it. Well, technically, the law should apply evenly, but it always seems to not, right? It almost always seems like it doesn't. That's a thought. We have laws that supposedly apply to everybody, but never really pans out that way, does it? I think Dendara's bringing up a good point. Am I running for president? No. I will not I cannot run for president. It's almost like they were taught the South will rise and they will need to just be ready, and that's patriotic or whatever. Yeah, I know that in some areas that's like like you said, that's like an unironic thing. Oh, they can stay mad. No, I can't run for president. I'm too young. Alright, we've got this video. And we've got 2 articles to go through. Because yet again, we have a massive weather event that's happening. In this time in California. A very rare weather event.
Burn scars you mentioned are fresh, and a storm of this size have officials on watch.
It's just the matter that it's coming so fast and over such a short period of time, and especially over those burn scars. And again, there's going to be a major flood threat also in Sacramento and over the valley. We don't want to downplay that at all. I mean, we're talking about one of the highest rainfall totals potentially that we're currently forecasting over a 24-hour period for Sacramento.
Yeah, period.
So I'll say it again, do not let the mild weather right now fool you. In a few hours, I'll need my raincoat too. The national...
Yeah, so the TLDR is there's a massive kind of like a storm that happened and delivered rains, wind, and that haven't been seen. So how many, yeah, exactly. Another day, another climate catastrophe. There's an atmospheric river. Yeah. Wasn't there an earthquake? I don't know about an earthquake. Yeah, once in a lifetime. How many lifetimes have we all lived? Just in the 5 years. Yeah, we keep continuously breaking records when it comes to natural disasters and weather events that are supposed to be once in a, whatever period, once in 1,000 years, once in 100 years, are now just kind of the new norm. And this is yet another example right here. Oh my god. Are these just ads? Oh yeah, they're just ads. Okay. Jesus, that's freaky. The storm here is definitely not a sign of what was to come. Oh yeah, so this was before the storm. That would be the second highest rainfall 24 hours total on record. Sacramento calls this a major system. It's something that we don't see very often in October or really in any season, fall or not. Yeah. Yeah, so just yet another weather event surely linked to climate change.
Hey y'all, it's Becky here from the Beckosphere, and welcome back to my channel where we talk about climate news and solutions. You have entered the climate recap where we cover what is being done to reduce the impacts of and prepare for climate change. So if that sounds like something that you would normally like to watch, go ahead and click the subscribe button below so that you make sure not to miss it.
I think that
miss it. And also go ahead and click the bell icon, we have so hopefully you'll get reminders every time.
Like we can't let the fear of like these people just like we still need to get to work. We still need to get to work. The troubles, yeah.
Every time I post. Today, we're going to talk about climate news from October 8th to the 21st. And one of the biggest climate news things would be the energy crisis currently going on, but I'm actually not going to cover that in this video because I already did a full-on deep dive on that a couple days ago. So you can go ahead and check that out after checking out this video. There actually is one thing that is relevant to the energy crisis that is going to be covered in this. Well, it's 2 news points, but basically it has to do with Europe's direction for nuclear. So you might find that interesting. And if you're wondering what this light is right here, that makes me look so much better, I'm sure. It's my iPad because we have a lot to cover, and so I need some help by looking at it. Now, before we get started, I have my first sponsor, and it is Divine Consulting. So Divine is the leading provider in atmospheric science, high performance computing, and cybersecurity for the US government agencies. Divine provides the manpower, critical knowledge, and
It's so
tools
good
for
to see
agencies to effectively
the Beckosphere get up there. Nice. Congrats.
and efficiently pursue their mission. So for more information about Divine Consulting and to learn how potentially you could be of service to US government agencies, go ahead and check out their website at divineco.com. That's DEVINECO.com. You must be a US citizen to apply. Thank you so much for being the first to sponsor my video. Yay! But let's go ahead and get started. U.S. federal agencies released their first iterations of climate adaptation and resilience plans per request from a Biden executive order in January. The White House also revamped its main climate science website, climate.gov, and launched new developing tools to educate people about climate risk. On the White House site, they added a page introducing the National Climate Task Force, which is a collaborative effort amongst every agency in the U.S. government, I should say. The United Arab Emirates announced that it would move towards net zero emissions by 2050. South Korea announced that it would raise its emissions reductions goal from 26% to 40% by 2030. A report by First Street Foundation found that a quarter of critical infrastructure in the U.S., such as police stations, hospitals, and airports, are at risk of being flooded. That's a lot. Another report, this time by the World Meteorological Organization, or WMO, found that flood-related disasters have increased by 134% since the year 2000, and the number and duration of droughts has increased by 29%. In addition to that, they also found that 107 countries are not on track for maintaining national water security by 2030. The WMO also reported that rare glaciers in Africa are at risk of disappearing over the next 2 decades due to climate change. I didn't know that there were glaciers in Africa, but apparently
Over 107 countries. That's a lot.
Apparently, they are located on Mount Kilimanjaro, Mount Kenya, and the Rwenzori Mountains in Uganda. The WMO and the UN also collaborated on a report that shows the disproportionate impact climate change will have on African countries. The African continent only contributes to 4% of global emissions, and yet it is expected and is already seeing higher levels of food insecurity, poverty, and displacement as a result of climate change. The U.S. Democrats have now dropped the $3.5 trillion spending bill, which is very much a climate spending bill, and also childcare spending bill, from $3.5 trillion down to $2 trillion to appease West Virginian Senator Joe Manchin and Arizona Senator Kirsten Sinema. And the worst part of it all is that Manchin got his wish to have the Clean Energy Performance Program, or CEPP, dropped.
True.
The CEPP had the potential of dropping U.S. emissions by 70 to 85% by 2030. Basically, just by encouraging utility companies to slowly increase the amount of their portfolio that is represented by renewable energy. Energy Innovation calculated that removing this program could cost the bill up to 35% of its emissions reduction potential. That's a lot. Now, a carbon fee could potentially make up for this, but of course, Manchin already said that there's no way in hell that he would vote for something like that. He makes it really hard for me not to just go off on him. Anyways, an analysis by the Rhodium Group looked at how the US can still meet Biden's energy goal of 50% emissions drop compared to 2005 levels by 2030 without that program by using joint action amongst all government agencies. And I will go ahead and deep dive into their analysis for my next week video. Pope Francis is no longer going to attend COP26, and they did not give any explanation why, but a Vatican delegate is still going to attend. Over 30 countries such as Canada, Japan, and Nigeria have joined a pledge to drop methane emissions by 30% by 2030. This pledge started with the US and the EU last month. Now we just need to see the top 4 methane emitters: China, India, Russia,
All
and
right.
Brazil.
So she said that she won't frustrate. That she's getting. It's really hard to be to not go off on Joe Manchin. So you know what? I guess I will do that for her, because like she's just way too nice. She's just way too nice. But the reality is, we have one person who's incredibly frustrating and who's basically putting the entirety of whatever possible anything, literally anything. It's not even like the things that we need to do. It's not even the things that we need to do, but it is something. And we have President Joe Manchin completely blocking it, not even willing to negotiate, not willing to do anything, just flat out condemning the next generation and the generation after to foot the bill for this yet again. This is not the time to ignore this issue. This is not the time to ignore climate change. And the reality is this guy is going to be the one to blame. Period. This guy's going to be the one to blame. Tweeting that Biden had reduced... What? Climate change can't be slow to reverse, so it's basically just time to plan for 230 feet of water. It's not about reducing, or it's not about that, Unicorn Glitty. It's about mitigation and adaptation at this point. I saw the Onion tweeting that Biden had reduced the multi-trillion-dollar pound to single-use recycle bag. Yeah, basically. Do you know about the Appalachian Storage Hub that is 100% behind Manchin's behavior? I don't know. I think that it's very simple. President Joe Manchin owns personal stakes in President Joe Manchin owns personal stakes in coal. President Joe Manchin is also very, very, very close to oil and gas lobbyists. He's been named kingmaker for ExxonMobil, so it's not that hard to kind of put two and two together. And on top of that, to add the icing on the cake, he's actually the energy committee chair to put the icing on the cake. How's that even legal? It shouldn't be, but hey, cool. Here, legal conflict of interest, something that would be illegal for the executive branch, because that would 100% fall for the emoluments clause. 100% fall under the emoluments clause, and that wouldn't fly in the executive branch. Maybe we should do something like that for senators. They can't have any type of conflict of interest or anything like that, or any personal stake, especially when they are the head of the energy committee. Well, that's true, Unicorn. Benjamin Dixon coming in hot with a party of 17. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Welcome, everybody. Thank you. How's it going, everybody? Morning. For those of you that do not know who we are A Difficult Truth. We do news and politics Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time. And we do Saturdays for Saturday Catterdays. So please make sure you hit the follow button. Join us here. And yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Appreciate it. Spread it forward. Raiders don't forget to follow and refresh. True. How's it going? All that plus the storage hub. I'm not sure what that even means, to be honest. Dude. America's get into Congress and get rich. Yeah, that's basically it. Like people get so like triggered about like Bernie Sanders having like at 80 plus years old like more than one house, and yet you have like literal multi-millionaires who have been who live the good life. We're getting closer to them partner numbers. Woof. That's right. You're right, Darknet. You're right. The committee passed Senator Manchin's rare earth element advanced technology that would allow for the development of technology capable of extracting rare elements from coal and byproducts to reestablish a U.S.-based supply chain. Oof. I'm always a little wary, but sometimes around. Definitely, I could share with you a whole shelf of books that discuss bias politicians show to elite and donors. It applies to Manchin as much as anyone else. Nonetheless, he does also come from a state that is quite mixed. It could be argued that his reluctance to provide unquestioned loyalty to the Democrats is understandable. Yeah, but I don't know. I think this one is kind of like... This one is kind of a case in point. It's like the classic case study, right? Like, people think, or the perception of people have of like money in politics is kind of like manifesting. Like, out of all the examples, this is like one of the more clear examples of like people literally being kingmakers, being lobbied, being and stakeholders to oil and gas, and it's really hard to kind of like not make that connection, especially when it's like so blatant, right? ExxonMobil says we don't want any type of climate legislation, and so it was. I don't know how else to decouple that, right? ExxonMobil literally calls up Joe Manchin, has weekly meetings, has called him the kingmaker time and time again, and not only Joe Manchin, but has about 10 or 11, which is just enough to hold the filibuster, interestingly enough. But it's not just Joe Manchin. They just consider him the kingmaker. But ExxonMobil says they do not want any type of climate legislation. They think it threatens their business, and so it was. I don't know how else to tell you. I mean, I'm sure that it's a lot more complicated than that, James. I'm sure it's more complicated than that. But this particular illustration, it's just hard for me to not make that connection, right? I'm sure that it's like... I'm sure that it's complicated in other scenarios, but this one is just really hard to not make that connect, like the interconnectedness there, and the A and B is just like matching up perfectly. So like, I don't know. Remember, Exxon says they're okay with the carbon tax, but only as likely as in reality suddenly Manchin is against it. Yeah, like, remember, whatever they say publicly that they're in favor of a carbon tax, but remember that undercover journalist, they actually don't want one. But in reality, exactly. But in reality, they don't want a carbon tax. They don't want anything that threatens a single penny of profit. That's what it is. That's literally what it is. They don't want as a business, they don't want anything threatening their pockets, and they do not in private support a carbon tax. They actually don't want that. It was already revealed by an undercover journalist that they actually their PR is completely different than what they actually want underneath, and what gets manifested into legislation. I'm sorry, but I can't in this particular case. I can't say it. I can't decouple that. There's just no way I can make any other assessment other than lobby says X and X gets done. I don't know. They know about to freeze people to death because of the power being allowed to go off during the freezing temperatures. Yeah, no. This is the problem with the privatization of power, of the electric grid. Texas, this is deregulation. This is deregulation and the privatization of energy. That's what it is.
To actually join. JP Morgan Chase announced that it would join 40 of its rival banking groups in the Net Zero Banking Alliance.
One freaking person is unironically condemning generations to come. One person. One person.
Pledging to align its lending and investment portfolios with net zero emissions by 2050. Now, JP is the #1 arranger of bonds for fossil fuels and the lead underwriter of green bonds. So this could potentially be a big deal if they follow through. Though speaking of them not following through, Chase and other major banks like Barclays and Citigroup claim that they have stopped supporting Arctic drilling projects, but the International Energy Agency says that 90% of those energy projects are paid for through that stream of finance, suggesting that there might be loopholes in the bank's promises. The Department of Energy launched the National Community Solar Partnership to bring together agencies, developers, and local government to develop enough community solar.
Yeah, sure. But like, what causes its division? Because like, there is no two sides to the story, right? There isn't two sides to what's happening to the planet. There's no two sides to what's happening to our ecosystems. There's no two sides to that. How did we get to the fact? How did we get to the point where people think that there are two sides to this and are so adamant about it? But yeah, I obviously, I'm not disagreeing that some things are a little bit more complex than this, James Napper. But in this specific situation, it's just really hard for me to not like decouple that from Joe Manchin. It's more than one person. I can tell you exactly why. Because if you're wealthy, you can survive climate change. Stay flat. Don't care who dies because of the water level rises. Well, the thing is, it's not just the water level, Unicorn Glitty. So your billions, your millions, your resources, they may give you an edge. They may help you for a bit, but it's gonna come for you one way or another. It's gonna come for you one way or another. My truck comes with an accessory called a turn signal. True. I hope it does. Your riches, your wealth is not going to save you completely. It may give you some time, but it's not going to save you. Gotta make profits, so the continuation of a livable world. True. That's it right there.
By 2025 to power 5 million homes. China hosted UN's biodiversity talks on October 11th, in which over 100 countries signed on to the Kunming Declaration to protect 30% of land and federal waters by 2030. We globally failed to meet the 2020 biodiversity goals made in Japan in 2010, so hopefully we'll do better this time. And ironically, China actually was not one of the ones to sign on to that declaration, even though they hosted the talk. But apparently they already have a red line that prevents developers from developing.
Yeah, basically, Kal-El, that's exactly
China's
the thought line
land.
process.
And also China did announce that it would provide $232 million to protecting biodiversity in developing countries. The UN advisors also said countries need to have a plan on how to responsibly use the other 70% of land that can be developed on. Indigenous groups around the world have asked to play a larger role in this conference as well as the COP26 conference in 2 weeks, but it's unclear how much of a role they're going to get to play. And we're finding that many environmental activists are even having trouble attending COP26 because they have no financial support to do so. A 2-year-long investigation by Global Witness revealed how harmful the palm oil industry is to local people and the environment. Palm oil is in over half of the products that you will find in the supermarket. Like, literally look on the ingredients list for practically anything and it's there. And it heavily contributes to deforestation in climate critical forests, which are basically forests that help maintain a globally stable climate. The investigation found that the East New Britain Resource Group and the New Britain Palm Oil Ltd.
I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, the catastrophic weather events will be problematic and will cause massive problems. But again, the issue is what happens when we can't get water. What happens when we can't get food? I mean, we should all do some work at the soup kitchens. Well, yeah, that's good. Local mutual aid. Yeah, if that's what you're suggesting, that is a great idea. Never discount that. The ritual will be fine. It's always the poor people who get hurt most by the climate change. Oh yeah, for sure. Absolutely, those will be the most affected, and those will be the folks who take who take the massive brunt of it. But I still think that at the end of the day, it's going to affect them, because at the end of the day, They need us. Right, as Derek Metcalf, then they will die because everyone else did it for them. Not only that, like, how are you supposed to get food in a place that is not conducive to growing food? Your water supplies are completely effed, as she pointed out. By 2030, over 107 countries are going to have problems with water supplies. I mean,
allegedly pays off local police to brutally remove people from areas that they want to start growing the palm trees in. And they also employ child labor, allegedly.
yikes.
As young as age 10. Now, this is all coming from recordings that were made by talking to those executives from those companies. So, yikes. It's like Exxon all over again. And they also allegedly commit international tax fraud too. So
No way.
while we're currently saying no to GMO,
way. Large multinational corporations creating tax fraud, acting in questionably ethical manners, up to and including child labor. No way. No way. No way. Nestle, anybody? Yeah, energy, electricity, heat, and transport are 73.2% of the CO2. Transportation only is 16%. Energy use in buildings, 17%. Unallocated fuel combustion, 7%. Fugitive emission from energy production, 5%. Agriculture, forestry, and land use, about 18%. Yeah, it seems like between the agriculture section and the fossil fuels, the fossil fuels, it has like pretty much the overwhelming majority right there.
and excessive sugar and all that good stuff in the supermarket, we should probably start also saying no to palm oil from these kind of companies.
True.
The UN voted to recognize the human right to a clean, safe, healthy, and sustainable environment. They voted and approved that. Now, the measure is non-binding, but it's a symbolic gesture meant to set a baseline understanding for the 150 countries in the UN. China, India, Japan, and Russia all abstained from voting, and though the US is not even a part of the UN Human Rights Council, sources say that Biden would not have voted yes, which
not surprised.
Definitely goes against what he is outwardly said supporting environmental justice. So, okay. A new report by the analytics firm MCSI found that fossil fuel execs are getting bonuses for environmental performance even when their company has been responsible for an environmental disaster that same year. For example, in 2018, when Marathon Petroleum was responsible for 23 oil spills that year, the board of directors awarded the chief executive over $270,000 for, quote, excellence in environmental, personal safety, and process safety improvements.
By what metrics?
This shows that many of the metrics that fossil fuel companies use to hold themselves accountable are bottom low. And so an environmentally good year for them could actually be a crap year for the environment. When looking at six of the largest fossil fuel companies in the US, most of them were hitting their environmental goals. To which the response is, quote, When you meet the metrics every year, that suggests that the metrics haven't been sufficiently challenging.
Yeah, like
the
they're
same firm,
they're like artificial.
MCSI, that found that also found that over half of publicly traded companies are failing to align their business practices with emissions reduction targets. Brazil reported a 77% increase in logging between September 2020 and September 2021. Selective cutting is the highest that it's been in the last 5 years in the Amazon. And while downright deforestation has only increased by 2%, areas that are logged are more likely to end up being completely deforested in the near future. A group of climate lawyers are urging the International Criminal Court, or ICC, to investigate Brazil's President Bolsonaro for crimes against humanity in the form of Amazon destruction and the murder of many environmental defenders. This isn't the first time that the ICC has been asked to intervene. Indigenous groups have been trying to get them involved since 2016, but apparently this is the first request that successfully connects
Many of the metrics are also lies, and no one relitigating these claims.
It's unclear yet whether or not the ICC will actually take up the case.
Underwater pipelines are better for the environment. Wait, didn't we just have a catastrophe where off the shore of California created a massive catastrophe because of an underwater pipeline? Yeah, we should land bats of rating their targets, encourage them to artificially sandbag their performance for optics. Yeah, that's what happens. That's literally what happens. They artificially make these metrics that have nothing to do with the environment, Zeoduke, and they meet them every year. Wow, amazing.
Of 10,000 studies, experts are twice as likely to focus on how climate change is impacting wealthy countries than countries in places like the Global South. This has helped paint a skewed picture of where climate impacts are happening. For example, scientists are attributing extreme weather events to climate change in places like the US more often, but they're not paying as much attention to extreme events in places like Kenya, creating an incomplete picture of how climate change is impacting humanity overall. A new report by the IEA outlines where current policies and possible policy directions will impact emissions. Current policies will basically do jack and get us to about 2.6 degrees warming above pre-industrial levels, which we already knew. But the report also emphasized the economic opportunity for us moving towards clean energy. The transition will not only be better for the environment, but also the global economy. Investments in batteries, wind, fuel cells, solar PV, and electrolyzers will potentially raise over $1 trillion annually. They tried to do that. They also laid out how much fossil fuel infrastructure is currently at risk of extreme weather events. For example, they found that over half of all LNG pipelines are at very high risk of being hit by a cyclone or a hurricane. Very concerning.
Yeah, no
Google
kidding.
Cloud announced it's partnering with 5...
Don't we have like a whole bunch of offshore refineries, I want to say? I want to say refineries. But anyways, offshore drilling, offshore oil and gas infrastructure in the Gulf Coast, a incredibly vulnerable area, as we saw last year's hurricane season, and yet we continue to be like completely okay with this. Cool. Then yeah, they did say that fracking was better for the environment. They also say that natural gas is clean energy, yada yada yada. Thank you for continuing to cover climate change. Thank you, spread it forward. I will never stop. Why are they allowed to lie on ads? Because we have a very good, very functioning system. Yes, offshore drills and wells. Yeah, that's the TLDR there. Then we have a very, very healthy, very functional system. Sorry, yeah, not offshore refinery. That's a whole other process. The ways to extract fossil fuels.
Sustainably focused companies to offer public and private sector consumers tools to understand and reduce their environmental risk exposure. Their partners are the data visualizing company Cardo, Earth imaging company Planet, climate risk advisor Climate Engine, vehicle fleet manager Geotab, and satellite imaging and mapping platform. Indian automaker Tata is planning to expand its EV selection by developing 10 EV designs over the next 5 years. The company is staked by TPG Rise Climate Fund and the Abu Dhabi-based sovereign wealth fund ADQ. So far, the US has endured 18 extreme weather events, each costing around $1 billion, according to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration.
$18 billion. And that's just in 2021. For 18 extreme weather events in the US alone. In the US alone. Holy yikes. Yeah, exactly. Tell me again how it is tell me again how it is too expensive to deal with the climate crisis when we're having like tens of billions of dollars each, well, depending on the nature of the year. I suspect that these events will become more frequent and more catastrophic, but this is the price right here. It's too expensive. Yeah, sorry guys. We're just gonna have to deal with the tens of billions of dollars instead of just actually solving the problem. Holy yikes. The Olympic levels of mental gymnastics to kind of like explain that and rationalize that.
National Center for Environmental Information. This puts 2021 right behind the record-breaking 2020, which experienced 22 extreme weather events. And
hey, that's awesome. The 2 years are back-to-back with first and second place, respectively. Nice. So just 2 years alone, we're what, 40-something billion between the two, between 2020 and 2021? About 40-ish billion? Something like that? Cool.
Went down with 2021 yet, so it could surpass 2020.
Yeah, exactly.
A Pew Research study looks at how many Americans believe that they've seen extreme weather events in the past year. Overall, 2/3 say that they're seeing these events happen more frequently than they used to. France announced that it'll spend $34.6 billion over the next 5 years on small nuclear reactors, semiconductor plants, and decarbonizing the French industry sector. French President Macron said that he wants France to become a global leader in hydrogen, in green hydrogen. Additional funding will go towards improving the country's agricultural sector to increase domestic output and reduce the sector's greenhouse gas emissions. Meanwhile, the environmental activists in France won a lawsuit against the French government over climate change. France overshot its emissions targets by 15 million metric tons between 2015 and 2018, and the court has ordered the government to take all necessary measures to repair the damage by the end of next year. A New York Times investigative piece found that private equity industry invests at least $1.1 trillion in the U.S.
I wish like we had these type of like measures here. I wish we had like some type of recourse like over there. I wish we had some type of recourse like over there where you can sue the government for basically not meeting the requirements, and then the judicial system will force them to go and fix it. In other words, there's a system of accountability, kind of. I know that like it's not like, you know, exactly as how it'd be ideal, but at least they have a route of accountability over there. The government has checks and balances when it comes to climate change that we do not have. We can't sue the government and be like, "Hey, you didn't meet you didn't meet the quota that you said you were going to meet," and the courts will then say, "Okay, well, you gotta fix that." Nothing like that exists here. Yeah, exactly. Accountability. What's that? So 88% is going towards traditional energy. True.
energy sector, and yet only 12% of that goes to clean energy, despite the fact that clean energy is the largest growing sector or portion of that sector. $1.1 trillion is double the combined market value of three of the largest energy companies, Exxon, Chevron, and Royal Dutch Shell. So that's a lot of money. 29 of the world's biggest investment firms and pension funds plan to drop emissions in their portfolio holdings by a quarter by 2025, according to an announcement by the Net Zero Asset Owners Alliance. This group includes Alliance, Aviva plc, Swiss Re AG, and the California Public Employees Retirement System, or CalPERS. It seems like the term net zero is becoming a trendy term, and climate denial groups are catching on to that. One of the big organizations, called the Global Warming Policy Forum, has rebranded itself to Net Zero Watch. Their site says they aim to discuss the, quote, serious implications of expensive and poorly considered climate change policies, which to me reads like we're going to push the idea that the transition is too expensive and moving too fast, casually ignoring the fact that solar is now the cheapest form of energy and there are tons of economic opportunities moving towards clean energy.
Yeah, not only that, we just saw the stories that she went over where in just 2 years alone, it was like $40 billion in losses. I mean, yeah. Yeah, they call it, we should call it dirty energy. They call it renewable green energy. We should rebrand to traditional energy, black or dirty energy. Yeah, death energy, there you go. It feels like we already lost the climate change fight. Not really. I don't think so.
There's also another climate denial group under a similar name called Net Zero Scrutiny Group. In other climate denial news, our favorite kind of, I'm sure, apparently Caesar Palace just hosted the Heartland Institute's 14th International Conference on Climate Change. Now, the Heartland Institute is a huge climate denial group, and they used to advertise on Google via YouTube. I remember that. Yeah. And so I bet they're not allowed to anymore, which is great for YouTube, but very embarrassing for Caesar Palace, especially since Caesar Palace itself has its own emissions reductions goals. So it seems quite contradictory for them to be hosting a conference like this. The Biden administration announced plans to build major offshore wind farms off the coast of Maine, New York, the Mid-Atlantic, the Carolinas, California, Oregon, and the Gulf of Mexico. The Department of Interior hopes to hold lease sales by 2025, and these projects could create around 77,000 new jobs. A report by Rystad Energy found that the demand for nickel will surpass its supply by 2024, which would be extremely problematic for the EV production industry. But not all EV batteries require nickel, so more companies could decide to build around batteries that don't require nickel, which Tesla and Volkswagen have already promised to do. But this does show a larger problem that we're going to be experiencing for other materials like lithium and cobalt. So it really emphasizes the need for a closed loop system with battery.
So I mean, like, here's the awesome thing. If you organize for example, your cities and your public transportation and things like that, and reduce the need for a car, and B, if you have good public transportation, I'm pretty sure that we can reduce kind of the necessity for this. So I think that we should probably be focused on that. Finding old batteries at a very low cost of energy, it just doesn't happen very often. I'm not sure what that means.
So that we don't have to continuously mine for new products. On October 12th and 13th, I believe, environmental activists, mostly indigenous, protested outside the White House, delivering a 1 million signature list to the Corps of Engineers to stop and bridge Line 3 pipeline that was recently completed. 155
I believe somebody brought this up earlier.
Activists were arrested. 155. That's a lot compared to other events that have happened in the White House. Similar protests by indigenous people also took place across Latin America to mark the 529th year of indigenous protest. Some international officials seem to be downplaying COP26 now because they are not convinced that a lot of big policy decisions are going to get done. Other countries, like certain island nations, remain hopeful that there's still momentum. It was officially announced that the Australian and Indian prime ministers will be attending COP26, but China is still in the wind. Russia's President Putin is reportedly not going to attend, but Putin did recently announce that Russia will reach net zero emissions by 2060, which is the same goal as China. Australia
I'm gonna press X to doubt on that one.
said it does not plan to update its existing 2030 emissions goal, which I'm not sure if there is one existing, but India said that it plans to do so. Meanwhile, documents leaked to Greenpeace revealed that many countries are lobbying to basically rewrite a UN report that's going to come out soon about what needs to be done to curb emissions. Some main participants of that would be Saudi Arabia, Australia, and Japan. And they've basically been trying to put into question the need to move away from fossil fuel at all. Now, Saudi Arabia and Australia, I get. They're large fossil fuel exporters. Japan? Am I missing something? Like, why Japan? That's just weird. In one memo, the Saudi oil ministry asked phrases like, quote, the need for urgent and accelerated mitigation action at all scales to be removed from the report. A senior Australian government official rejected that closing coal-fired plants would be necessary at all. And a senior Indian scientist from the country's Central Mining Institute, which is a very big, influential
Hey, Silver Night Dragon.
Institute for
Tesla
the
has a plan
government,
for battery recycling.
said coal
And it's also looking into iron-based batteries for commercial use, which don't use many rare earth minerals. Well, I hope so. I hope that, I mean, the technology definitely exists to make things a little bit better.
will remain necessary for decades. India is the second largest coal importer. In addition to that, several wealthy nations are trying to move away from the idea that they have to give any money to poorer countries, even though they've created the majority of emissions that poor countries then have to suffer disproportionately for. The leak consisted of 32,000 submissions made by governments, companies, and other interested parties to the group of scientists, the poor group of scientists that's trying to put the whole thing together. Many of the COP26 corporate sponsors have also condemned the event as mismanaged and put together at the very last minute. Apparently, the organizers have done a poor job at laying out what will happen at the event and when. A new media company called Peak Action, spelled P-I-Q-U-E, Action, launched on Monday. They plan to break into the mini doc industry, making videos that are about people working on cutting emissions, and their videos will be spread on social media.
Nice.
Quote, we want to change the culture of doom, and the way we're going to do that is with short-form viral content on social media. They said that they're already working with top TikTokers to...
Yeah, so I think that part of the leaked IPCC report said that, like, we do need some type of, like, society, we do need some type of societal, like, a change in order for us to be on board with this type of stuff, because it's going to require a lot of work. And I think that it requires anywhere from 10 to 30% shift in society will get enough action done.
Promote their first batch of videos to get out to the masses and actually successfully go viral. You can check out their TikTok account at Peak Action. Again, that's PIQUE_action. An analysis by the Dallas Fed found that while oil is an important part of Texas's economy, they would be fine without it when they're moving towards renewable energy. In fact, not relying on that industry might actually calm the economy down a little bit, because right now it's really at the mercy of energy price swings.
Here's the quote from the IPCC working group theory that was leaked. The quote is as follows: if 10 to 30% of the population were to demonstrate commitment to low carbon technology behavior and lifestyles, new social norms could be established.
Mississippi installed the world's first large flexible transformer, meaning that it can adjust to different voltage levels and conditions. Quote, as opposed to a one-to-one replacement, the flexible transformer could serve as a universal spare or replacement for multiple transformers spanning a wide range of voltage and impedance levels. The goal of the Department of Energy-backed project is to find a way to smoothly integrate renewables into the energy sector and also boost grid resilience. The transformer was a collaborative effort between GE Research, Prolic GE, and the Mississippi utility company Cooperative Energy, which is a very appropriate name. 2 huge grant-making foundations announced that they would stop making grants accessible to fossil fuels this week. They are Ford Foundation and the McKnight Foundation. And the MacArthur Foundation also announced that they will be doing that. They announced that last month. California is banning small internal combustion engines like the ones found in lawnmowers and leaf blowers starting in 2024. Now, when I first read this, I was in my office for work, and there was a leaf blower and a lawnmower that were working right outside, and I was just like taking in the fumes. So to hear this, to read that while I was experiencing that, I'm excited for those to be gone. But apparently I might not have just been breathing in like carbon dioxide and greenhouse gases, but I could also be breathing in nitrogen oxides,
base of BJ.
Which are great
They
because
installed
they can
Optimus
cause
Prime in
cancer,
Mississippi.
cardiovascular disease,
Yeah, basically.
asthma, and other respiratory issues. So yay me. Satellite data exposed another example of environmental injustice in the US. A study looking at that data found that people of color are 28% more exposed to nitrogen oxide than white people. This is largely due to minority communities being more likely to live near diesel trucking routes. Quote, "There's a whole racist history of freeway placement in that freeways didn't end up where they ended up by accident." 9 major companies, including Amazon and IKEA, announced that they would have net zero ocean shipping by 2040. Now, ocean shipping is a very overlooked form of transportation that needs to be decarbonized, but it actually accounts for 90% of world trade and is responsible for about 3% of global emissions. The UK announced an updated and expansive net zero strategy with more money from private sources for clean energy, EVs, decarbonizing buildings, and adding new small nuclear reactors. Another European country that's actually moving towards small nuclear reactors. Very interesting. Prime Minister Boris Johnson hopes that the whole process will add 440,000 new jobs by 2030. The cement industry announced a concrete goal to decarbonize. Yes, I went there, and no, I didn't come up with it. It came from the Grist article that announced this, and I just couldn't help myself. Cement and concrete producers around the world, minus China, announced that they would plan to reduce emissions by 25% by 2030, with the ultimate goal of achieving net zero cement production by 2050. The group is called the Global Cement and Concrete Association, or GCCA. Now, cement and concrete are some of the hardest industries to decarbonize because their products require an excessive amount of heat to produce, which it more naturally comes from fossil fuel production and is more expensive to do with renewable energy. Cement production accounts for 7 to 8% of yearly global emissions, so more than the continent of Africa. Yikes. Some have called the GCCA's plan surprisingly comprehensive, while others say it's not the whole answer. One encouraging piece to note about the plan, though, is that it does not include any form of carbon offsetting, meaning that they plan to achieve this goal purely through changes in industry practices and carbon capturing technology. Quote, "In 10 years, we need to prove not only the technological feasibility, but also the economic feasibility.
Right,
we are confident this will work." Similarly, Australian mining company Rio Tinto announced that they plan to drop emissions by 15% by 2025 on their way to halving emissions by 2030. The UN looked at 15 countries' carbon reduction targets and processes and found that most of the fossil fuel spending plans for those countries do not line up at all with Paris Agreement. At all.
Really?
Now you can probably guess which
way.
the 15 countries are. It's the usual, you know, the EU, the US, China, India, Russia, Australia, the usual, right? These countries are currently planning on extracting twice as much coal, oil, and gas by 2030 as the Paris Agreement extraction cap allows. Toyota and Stellantis, which is a parent company for Chrysler and Jeep, announced that they will join the trend made by Ford, GM, SK, and LG Chem and make battery factories in North America. Forecasters predict actually now that the EV shift might happen faster than previously anticipated. 2 new reports by one of the world's top medical journals, The Lancet, came out on Wednesday showing that health problems around the world are already getting worse due to climate change. The reports tracked 44 global health indicators and found all of them are getting worse. At least 150 people were killed by flash flooding and landslides in India and Nepal this week after the heaviest rainfall they've seen in over a century. Now, it's already unusual that they're experiencing this kind of rainfall in October because the monsoon season is usually over by this point, but the monsoon season this year started quite late. Prince William and Duchess Kate awarded the first Earthshot prizes of about $1.4 million each to sustainability and conservation efforts around the world. Some of the winners include the country of Costa Rica, the city of Milan, and the Bahama Coral Replanting Program Coral Vita. There were others as well, and you can check them out in the link below. To try to increase the prestige of the award, they made a whole ceremony around it because they wanted to be a big thing that a lot of people strive for. And so it included musical sets by Ed Sheeran, Coldplay, and KSI, and the awards
Yeah, I think it's part of the background music, Nug Wrangler.
were presented by actors such as Emma Watson, David Oyelowo, sorry for butchering that, and Emma Stone. And David Attenborough gave the opening remarks, naturally. Now, side note, but Coldplay did announce in 2019 that they were not going to do another tour until they found a way to make it 100% net zero emissions. And they are starting a tour soon, which means that they figured it out. They are doing a zero emissions tour. So good for them. And that was the news from October 8th to 21st. Great to end on Coldplay. Sorry these videos keep getting longer. I swear, like, this is only like maybe a third or a fourth of the news that I came across too. So it just really shows how much is happening right now, which is great. Unfortunately, not most of it is good, but you know, a lot of news. And because I have so many links and stuff, I'm going to try a Notion link, which is basically just it's a website called Notion, and I'm going to link a web page via Notion on there. So let me know if it works, but that's my goal, because honestly, copying and pasting links in the comment section after I've abused my poor description box, it's really hard. They clearly do not want you to put links in comment sections. So let me know if the Notion link doesn't work, but hopefully.
Yeah, Notion is like a little app that it's a way to share things and kind of have a personal notepad if you want, or planner if you want. Notion's pretty cool. I originally made a Notion account just to I originally made a Notion account just to put down ideas for like podcasting and things like that. So yeah, pretty interesting. Anyone else hearing a little horn? Yeah, I think it's part of the music in the background, Nug Wrangler. All right, so really quickly, just kind of like on the last note of that, Coldplay has announced that this next World Tour will have a net zero carbon footprint, release a sustainability plan that includes direct carbon capture by Climeworks. Interesting. Interesting. I mean, hey, if they're doing net zero emissions, that's pretty interesting. They could also do things like virtual concerts and stuff like that. Oh yeah, this is Silver Night Dragon's original post here. I'll put it up in the chat. Net zero is greenwashing. It depends on what they mean by that, but because like net zero, they could still be emitting stuff. They're just not emitting more than X or whatever it is. The real net zero plan could just be as simple as doing like concerts online. I don't know what the problem is. I would say the carbon capture part makes it better than purchasing offset from Tesla. Oh, I see. They're paying for carbon offsets. Ah. So that's how they claim that they're net zero. It just makes shows online. I don't know. It's not that hard. Goat Milking Dragon, thank you for the follow. I see a few members of the Dragon Squad. If I'm correct, a few members of the Dragon Squad. Welcome. I appreciate that. Alright folks, really quickly, this will probably just take like 2 seconds. So just to kind of end on that, CO2 levels in the atmosphere reach a 3 million year high, putting the world way off track on climate goals, which the Beckett sphere went over, that we are nowhere near. We're not heading in the right direction. The concentration of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere once again reached record highs, according to a UN report published on Monday, putting the planet on course for warming that it far exceeds the critical limits to stave off the catastrophic events for climate change. The concentration of CO2 in 2020 was 149% higher than levels before industrialization, hitting another annual record according to the WMO Greenhouse Gas Bulletin. Yeah. Although COVID pandemic caused a temporary decline in new emissions, it has no discernible impact on the amounts of impact of greenhouse gases already in the atmosphere, the report found. Instead, gradual trend of increasing greenhouse gases that has been registered over the past decade has continued. The findings added a sense of urgency ahead of the COP26 climate talks, which began in Glasgow, Scotland on Sunday, on the heels of a G20 leaders meeting in Rome. There are expectations for some G20 nations that have not increased their ambitions since Paris to do so ahead of COP26. So TLDR, yeah, TLDR, this is it. Right here. TLDR, this is it right here. We're way off track. On that note, folks, I do appreciate all of you guys hanging out here. Thank you so much for all the support. Thank you, Benjamin B. Dixon, for the raid. Thank you for all the new follows. Thank you for the support that you guys give. You guys are what makes this channel go. Please make sure you hit the follow button. Please make sure that you hit the subscribe button. Join us on the Bird app. Join us on Discord. All of that awesome stuff. As always, thank you, Astro. Thank you, Darknet. Yes, support your local musicians. Absolutely. Absolutely. As always, folks, please stay safe. Please take care of each other. I love you all, and I hope to see you guys in the next one. See ya. Hang tight, folks. Let's go show Tina some love, alright? Let's go show Tina some love. We're heading out in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Here we go.